What's up, MMA fans? Welcome back to the Rocco and Ryan MMA Show. This is episode 12, and of course, we are recapping UFC 252 and diving into the card this weekend, UFC Vegas 7. But first, the most important thing, we need a Rocco Martin health update, man. Tell us how you're feeling.
I mean, every week's a little better, so I got a couple more weeks in this IV, and after that, I'll be able to hopefully start working back into training a little bit. I mean, I don't think I'll be able to go live for maybe a month or two, but I'll be able to start doing a little bit something here in a couple weeks and slowly get back and hopefully fight sometime at the end of the year would be the ideal situation,
Yeah, and so you still have the IV in. What has that been like, I guess, on a day-to-day basis to deal with that?
It's starting to get annoying, It's starting to get like things like they redo it every week, so it's sometimes it gets aggravating in different spots and then it's pulling and it's right in the crease of my elbow. So every time I bend my elbow, it's moving. Just a weird, definitely different, not being able to do anything too. I've been stuck into my place other than the one weekend I went out for a little bit was the first time I got out of the camper and lived life a little bit since the whole injury. So I'm excited to get back to real life. Obviously, everyone's dealing with the COVID as well, but I mean, I've been stuck in here, so I'm ready to get out.
How has the rehab been? Are you you're noticing progress?
Yeah, I mean, I started moving a lot better. I'm biking now a little bit. I've been doing a little bit of leg pressing. And so the movement's coming back, but there's still a lot of pain when I'm moving like that. But it's just a thing where I guess once you get the joint moving right, that the pain will eventually go away. But I mean, it sucks just always have a constant pain there, but I'm ready to move on from this whole knee thing and forget about it, put it in the past, put it in the rearview mirror, and move forward.
Yeah, I was thinking about you the other day when I saw Nico Price's fight announcement, and I just wondered how you reacted to that. I mean, what did you think of that? Did that get your blood boiling and really make you want to get out there and get training quicker?
I mean, that seemed like an exciting fight. You know what I mean? That seems like makes sense kind of in the scheme of the UFC. I think that Nico knows he's not going to make a run ever. And so he's just going to be an exciting fighter, you know what I mean? And put on exciting fights. And that's the route he's going to go to stay in the UFC, and good for him to feed the family like that. But I just want to fight. I don't care who anymore. At this point, I'm just going to be like, try to fight anyone, anywhere, and just try to get back some momentum and really make a push here. And I mean, 2020 has been pretty much a scrap year, it seems like.
It's been tough, man. I mean, not just for you, for so many people. It's just been a brutal year in a variety of ways. I can't wait every day I get a little bit older. It's not as much fun. My back hurts. I don't feel like I did when I was 21 anymore, but I kind of want 2021 to get here. 2020 has sucked. I just want it to be behind us now.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive in. UFC 252, it's in the books now. It was kind of, if I'm going to be totally honest, a little bit of an underwhelming card. I was looking forward to it so much, and obviously the main event went 5 rounds, which was awesome. I was hoping that it would, so you can see 25 minutes of action with those two monsters of men there. But the eye pokes were a little interesting. It clearly, the one that DC had, it looked like it was knuckles deep, man. It was pretty bad. What was your takeaway from that championship fight?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's hard to complain about the eye pokes when there's been so many between those two, and mostly on DC's part, if not all of them except that one. So obviously, it wasn't on purpose. I don't ever think really eye pokes are on purpose. But I expected DC to wrestle more. I surely did. I thought he'd wrestle a little bit more. Mostly, I felt like he shot one takedown right away in the first round, and it was an easy takedown. Like, he took him down easy. He just didn't stay on top, But I was shocked at mostly with, his coaches pleading for him to shoot a takedown. I felt like he wasn't coachable. I felt like he wasn't listening. I don't know if he was just so concentrating on his eye and he just lost sight of the fight, you know what I mean, or whatnot. But Stipe fought a smart fight and made another change in the middle of the fight where he kept pulling out of the clinch, and that's when DC was clipping him over and over with that right hand. And then finally he was like, no, I got to stay in the clinch. And that's when he stayed in and kept pushing DC against the cage so that he couldn't hit him with that right hand anymore. So he made adjustments in mid-fight again, even though I thought that that's how they should have planned it right away, mostly after watching the first 2 fights. But he adjusted mid-fight again, and that paid a lot of dividends, and obviously won him the fight.
As clearly, trying to take someone down, I mean, is exhausting. It just saps all your energy. And with DC being as heavy as he is, especially at heavyweight, I wonder if he just didn't have the gas tank to try and take Stipe down over and over and keep up that pace, especially with Stipe being so good at scrambling and being able to get back up to his feet, even when he does get taken down. Do you think that may have played a little bit of a factor?
I mean, the only thing is, I know that it sounds like right, but it was just seemed to me that like I said, I just go off that first takedown that DC hit, mostly for a high-level wrestler he is. That was no energy for him. That's just his bread and butter outside single down right away. And I was just like, that was easy. Like you're not getting tired doing that. You get tired, it's mostly from failed takedowns or shooting takedowns, and you're in this huge scramble. I mean, he never even attempted a takedown other than the first one, not a real one. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, I think that obviously with age, he's definitely worried about his gas tank, and that's why he's not shooting those takedowns. But I would have liked to see him attempt it, mostly when your corner is screaming in your ear in between rounds, like, hey, we need you to come out and let's get a takedown right away. Like, let's just make him think about the takedown. Let's get this takedown right out of the way, because obviously once you go away from the takedowns altogether, it's just a striking fight, you know what I mean? And obviously Stipe with being, I think he's got a little bit better boxing mostly with his size, you know what I mean? And the right hand was landing for him. So I thought that DC should have mixed it up a little bit better is all. I do think he will regret that when he looks back on it, that he just wasn't listening to his corner at all. That's what my takeaway was.
Man, when I look at Stipe now versus a few years ago before he won the belt and before he was like really beating the best of the division, he's like a completely different fighter, man. He's so much better. And I want to talk about him here in a minute, but first I want to get your opinion on what DC's legacy is right now. If he doesn't come back, it seems like he's going to stick to that. He's got such a bright future with commentating and coaching wrestling. He's 40 plus years old now. I mean, he's accomplished so much. Like, what is his legacy right now if he never comes back and fights again?
Man, a guy that I feel like is just overcome a lot of adversity actually in the UFC. Because I remember, when he fought Jones the first time, a lot of people hated DC. The fans did not like DC. DC was not a fan favorite because he kind of came off as a crybaby a little bit, and it was just weird how he was getting portrayed as this like guy that was just in Jones' shadow kind of, and then Jones popped, and all of a sudden like people got to know the real DC and see what a genuine person he really was, and that was my biggest takeaway from his whole career was that, I mean, from what you see, he's a family man to the core. He still coaches wrestling. He's helps the community. Never went above his means. It seems like, he doesn't have like this ridiculous mansion. He was always, I remember when he was driving that Prius still for a long time there, just a guy that, has just worked really hard his whole career. And he will go down as one of the greats. I don't think he's going to be, top 5, but he's a guy that's never had PD troubles, won the belt at heavyweight and light heavyweight simultaneously, defended the titles. And really it's just an impressive overall career, man, for a guy that came in late as well, at an older age. One of the best combat, athletes of all time for sure.
He's in my top 10 for sure. Pound for pound, go all the way back. I mean, would you agree with that?
I agree with that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, and again, one of the good guys too. So if this is it for DC, tip of the cap. Thank you for everything that you've done for the sport. A legend. He's a legend. So, all right. Now, Stipe remains the champ. There's a lot of interesting matchups now. You got Ngannou and Jones just firing off all these different things on Twitter. They clearly want the shot. Jones vacates the 205 belt, which I don't really agree with. I still think he had some work there to do, but he has been dominant and a champion for a while, so he can do what he wants to do. But it really is interesting, Rocco. So tell me right now, like off the cuff, like your gut and your head, like where are they lining up right now? Stipe versus Ngannou, Stipe versus Jones. What happens?
Yeah, no, I think that they're going ahead with the Ngannou. I think that just the way he's destroyed his last few opponents. Not it wasn't like a close fight or nothing like that. It's like you've seen him turn that corner in his brain, because he obviously has always had the physical tools, but in his mind, he's changed. He turned the corner, and he's looked like probably the best heavyweight in the world right now. And I think that it'd be interesting. Stipe's gonna have to bring out those wrestling shoes. You know what I mean? Because this guy hits hard, and he's right now he's flinging those shots with no fear whatsoever. And I do think that Jones will sit on the sidelines and he's going to get the next shot at the heavyweight title. I just don't see them making him fight a contender fight. It doesn't make sense. It's such a big marketing thing where you're going to get this guy. You're going to make tons of pay-per-view money. Mostly, obviously, if Stipe wins, that's a huge fight. I think it's bigger than Ngannou versus Jones, but you can still, I think anyone can sell Ngannou if he's the champ. You know what I mean? But just with legacies of saying Stipe is the greatest heavyweight of all time, and then you have the greatest light heavyweight talk of all time, that's a huge marketing fight. And I do, the one thing I did, after looking back a little bit, is I do think Jones is slowing down a little bit athletically, you know what I mean? I think that at heavyweight, he may match up a little bit better now because he's slowing down a little bit. He's so long still for the division. And like you said, he's got two freak brothers that are giants, so I would imagine he's going to be able to pack on some weight, probably get some of the best supplements out there. If not, him, he might get a little extra, you never know. And maybe he retires for a little bit, goes out of that USADA pool for a couple months, and then jumps back in, once he's clean again. Who knows what he's about to do. So it's interesting. There's a lot of matchups there, but I do think that he fights for the title after Ngannou versus Stipe.
I'll tell you what, I am going to be so angry if, God forbid, Stipe gets injured and then Dana White says, all right, we're going to make Jones versus Ngannou for the interim belt. I'm going to lose my mind because that shouldn't happen. If Stipe is shelved, if that ever happens and he has to sit out for a little while, make that the number one contendership fight. Make Jones fight Ngannou, the winner fights Stipe. Enough of the interim belts. It happens too much. I agree with it in some ways, in some instances, but not here. Stipe's the champ, and I don't feel like unless he has a year or longer layoff, there should be any interim belts. Ngannou, Stipe, like you said, that's the fight that's going to happen. If Stipe can get out of the first round, is there any way he's going to lose that fight? Because if it's in the first round, Ngannou has such a good chance of clipping him. But as you saw in the last fight, Stipe's so good. He's got such great cardio, and Ngannou may gas a little bit quicker. Is that his best case to win the belt, is to clip him early? Because I'm not sure I see him winning if the fight goes out of the first round.
The only thing I'm worried about a little bit, I'm looking at these DC versus Stipe. No one would ever say that DC has power like Ngannou. You know what I mean? Not even close. You know what I mean? Granted, he does have very good striking, mostly for a guy that small. He's jabbing. Their reach is like an 8-inch reach difference, and he's out jabbing Stipe, which I was like, geez, that's impressive. But DC's knocked him out, and DC has hurt him a couple times, multiple times with that right hand, and that's the only thing I get worried about is Ngannou touches you once, I don't think you're recovering, you know what I mean? And but Stipe, like you said, Stipe is the clear champion. He's beaten Ngannou, he's beaten Dos Santos, he's beaten all the top guys, you know what I mean? There's no one that could say, hey, I deserve to be the champ. No, this guy's beating you. This guy's cleared the division. Literally, he's cleared the division out right now. Other than Ngannou's turned the corner, and they fought. It was 3-4 years ago that they fought. So, I do think, obviously, if they're always going to make a title. So if Stipe gets hurt, they're going to make the title fight. But I think that Ngannou could be. If I had to pick today, I'm going with Ngannou.
All right. So okay. Heyday vintage Fedor versus any of these guys. Does Fedor win in his prime? A lot of people are saying Stipe right now is the greatest heavyweight ever. And I hear a lot of other people saying, it's still Fedor. Pump your brakes. Look what he did when he was in his prime. What do you think as far as that's concerned?
I mean, it's hard to tell, you know what I mean? Because I feel like the eras are so different, you know what I mean? And the era that Fedor was going through was a one-dimensional era, you know, where these guys weren't complete fighters. You know what I mean? They were all, you're either like a freak striker, or, and he fought a lot of guys that were a lot smaller than him too, you know, and he's not a big heavyweight either. I mean, he's not small, but he wasn't like a giant, you know, but, and Stipe mixes it up very well. Like, he can wrestle, he can grapple. I mean, he can push against the cage and hold you. He can outstrike you. So I think well-rounded is Stipe, but obviously it's still a tough fight. You know, I think that because just that era back then is just different. You know, and that's the only thing that with Fedor was well-rounded, though, a fighter with great grappling as well and aggressive striking. And I felt like he never gassed really. So I mean, I think that is an interesting matchup. It's an interesting matchup.
I mean, look, Rocco, we're 15 minutes into the show right now, and we're still on this. That just goes to show you how exciting it is to have the heavyweight division where it is right now. I mean, this is as good as it's been maybe ever in the UFC from what I can remember. I mean, you're going way back to when Couture was the champ. Like, right now, like, I am so jacked up about what's to come, especially now adding John Jones into the mix. Very, very interesting. So a lot more to dissect as the world turns and time passes. But let's talk about this co-main event, Marlon Vera beating Sean O'Malley. I don't want to take anything away from Marlon Vera. Like, he came out, he looked great. To me, personally, I feel like Sean O'Malley got injured. Maybe it was because of the leg kick, and granted so. But, you know, injuries happen in the sport. I do feel if that didn't happen, I still think Sugar would have found a way to win. I think he's going to be back, and I think this is going to be a nice learning lesson. It might humble him a little bit and bring him back to be in a better, more focused, and just a better fighter. I mean, what did you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you know, from watching fights as well, you know, you've seen this now multiple times happen. You know, you saw Cejudo get it with DJ right away, and he switched, and you know, he fought through that pain, and finally because usually if you hit that nerve, you know what I mean, that you know, eventually will come back, you know what I mean? And I don't know if that's exactly what happened, if it was the nerve that shut down the leg, and that was where then he rolled. Then it looked like he rolled his ankle really bad. So I don't know if he broke his foot during that roll. But I've also saw Moretta versus Jones fight with torn ACL, MCL, LCL. I mean, what didn't he tear in that knee? And that thing's buckling all over the place, and you see this guy fighting through it. So you're seeing Cejudo fight through it, and now you've seen it multiple times. And those calf kicks are for real, man. And people really need to start working on defending these and implementing them in your game plan. I think that they're a new staple of MMA, and Cheeto just landed the perfect kick, I think, and that's really what was the game changer. I do think that O'Malley might be a front runner after watching the fight. I think that O'Malley's a front runner, and he's gonna have to go through, you know, some self-check after the injury, and like you said, maybe humble himself a little bit, but you know, still stay confident, stay yourself, you know, because you want to be yourself at all times, and don't let, you know, loss can't change your whole perspective on fighting. You know what I mean? But maybe he realizes that, you know, this sport, you got to be mentally prepared to go through wars. You know, you got to be mentally prepared to fight through pain that you might have never thought that would ever happen in the cage. And hopefully this just makes him a better fighter.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I hope you're right. And in my gut, I feel like O'Malley will be back, and this is great for Marlon Vera. He's going to get himself another high-level fight next, and who knows how far he'll be able to go. So it's just great for the division all in all. Now, my boy Junior Dos Santos, I mean, I hate saying this, but I think it's time. I think it's time he hangs it up and he calls it a career, yeah, especially at heavyweight. I mean, look, when you're going against guys with that much power and you're getting knocked out, it was this 3 in a row now. You know, and look at the style that he has. He comes and bangs. Like, he's not a jiu-jitsu. I mean, he's a black belt in BJJ, right? But he doesn't do that. He wants to stand and knock you out. So I just feel like all the wars that he's had, he's clearly taken some damage over the years. He's one of the all-time heavyweight greats, former champion. He's done enough, and I want to see him have a long, happy life. He's got a family. From everything I can tell, you said he's a good human being. I think it's time. You know, if he wants to go out on a win, I would support that. But as one of my favorite fighters, Junior Dos Santos is, I'm ready for him to say bye-bye and walk off into the sunset.
I disagree. I disagree. I think that the reason why I disagree is that I feel like the tough part is that I feel like it's his body hasn't gone. You know what I mean? Like he's moving just like he used to. It's just the chin is gone a little bit. You know what I mean? And especially at heavyweight, these guys hit so hard that it just takes one shot. And I think it's a little bit mental on him a little bit. I feel like every time I see this guy, other than Ngannou that clipped him, you know, behind the ear, it's always he's putting himself against the cage. And I think that smaller cage played a part in this knockout, in this fight. That smaller cage where he took 2 steps back when normally he could take 3 or 4 steps back and move off. He took 2 steps back and his back was fully against the cage. What I'd like to see from this guy is him to come out and really unload, really let go of the boxing. Like listen, you come out and what we want you to do is throw like Ngannou. We want you to come out, and then if you get clipped, you know, then you get clipped. You know what I mean? But I'd like to see him stop doing one shot. You know, it seems like a lot of his punches is just a big overhand or a big uppercut, or I'd like to see him unload like some big combos and try to take people out in the first round. I think if he could change his mindset in that aspect, that he mostly at this division, I think his hand speed is so fast and he's got such good boxing. If he would just let his hands go, like right from the get-go and jump on him like Ngannou's been doing, that I think this guy still has some fights left on him. I haven't seen his movement shut down. I don't think his athleticism is shutting down. I think it's just the chin.
Yeah, I just feel like I would put DC and JDS in the same sentence as far as like DC says, if I'm not going to be fighting for championships, I don't want to be fighting. Like, I don't want to see JDS being a gatekeeper where these young up-and-coming hungry heavyweights got to go through him, a 40-year-old JDS whose chin isn't the same as it used to be, and have him get knocked out viciously once or twice more. Like, I just don't want to see that, you know? And at the end of the day, I think it's about fighters' health, and I hope you're right. I hope you're right. I mean, he still looks good inside of the cage. I hate seeing a guy that was the cream of the crop at one point in time just getting finished time after time now. It's tough to see.
Yeah, I'd like to know, because I do know you can be knocked out without having a concussion. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like because it's a nerve thing, you know. It's like you shut down the nervous system or something like that. So, I mean, I'd like just to know how much damage he's really taking, you know what I mean? Because it doesn't seem like he takes a lot of shots. Mm-hmm. It just takes, like, he's just getting hit 3 times. Mm-hmm. Just his chin is gone, you know? So I don't know if it's, like, giving him CT or giving him, like, real damage. Like, it's not like those Kane fights. Mm-hmm. Kane fights, man, you keep going through those wars like that, I'm like, now I'm worried, you know? But I feel like just getting knocked out, clipped, you know, after winning that first round pretty easily, I thought. And, really just got clipped, and I didn't see too much damage, you know, where I was thinking that, wow, I'm worried about his health, you know what I mean? And that's where I think that it's hard to walk away when you love what you do. You know what I mean? It's not just for money, you know what I mean? He loves to train, man. He loves the aspect of competing and training. And you know, so maybe the UFC, you know, gives him maybe not a gatekeeper role, but puts him on. I don't know exactly how to play out a career. Like, if you don't want to retire, just fight maybe lesser opponents or something like that, and try to just, you know, you're having fun, man. I don't see why you have to step away to try to, like, salvage your legacy. You know, I've thought about it for a while. I used to think like that. I used to think like, hey, you know, it'd be awesome to go out on top. But I'm like, damn, man, I love this sport. You know, I really do. I love fighting. I love the aspect of competition. So I'm like, shit, I'm going to ride this thing till the wheels fall off. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm going to ride this thing all the way until I'm like, hey, you can't do this no more.
But let's just say, you know, hypothetically speaking, you come back, which obviously you will, and you go on a tear, right? You win 5, 6, 7 in a row. You crack the top 10, top 5, and you're like considered one of the best 170-pounders in the world. Maybe you even win the belt, right? And you're at the pinnacle. And then you drop off and you start losing one after the other. And then before you know it, you got a record like BJ Penn. You know, like, what's BJ Penn's legacy now? Like, for me, when BJ Penn was in his heyday, my God, I mean, he was an absolute killer. He's one of the best ever that we saw in his prime. But his record now is like almost 500. He stayed too long. And I hate seeing it when guys like that were that good stick around too long, because I like legacy. And I feel like when you stick around too long, it does tarnish it. And I think at the end of the day, when you're an old man and you're gray and you can't get around, you want to be remembered as one of the best.
Do you feel like Anderson Silva is tarnishing his legacy then?
I feel like it has a little bit. I do, yeah. I think if
on top, he would have been just a legend.
I think if he would have retired after the second Weidman fight and just been, you know what, I had a good run. I was the best of the best. This young lion came up and took my spot. Now it's time for me to go off and to do something else. I think he would be still revered and considered one of the best evers. And he still is, as far as like in his prime. When he was in his prime, I mean, good Lord, like what a striker he was. But I feel like everything that's transpired since, I mean, he's losing one after the other, and that affects the perception of the casual fan. I mean, the hardcores like myself, you know, or like yourself, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, we're both fans, right? You're a fighter, I'm a journalist, but at the end of the day, we're both fans. We know what's what. We know how good they are in their primes, but I just feel like perception-wise, it does affect you.
Like you were saying, though, is I feel like to be considered a legend, right? Like you do need the hardcore fans. I don't think that to be a legend, like you can't, a casual fan, you can't take their opinion because they don't know shit other than the moment. You know what I mean? So yeah. I do think that like guys that have watched the sport from, you know, UFC 1, you know what I mean? Like there's some, like I've gone back and rewatched all the fights, you know what I mean? And you've seen the runs, you know what I mean? And you know when, okay, it's time, like, okay, father time's come in and you're no longer in your prime. I think as a you know, an analyst and a person has seen, you know, that it's a regular, you know, I'm a guy that's going to always watch fights until I die, you know how good these guys were, you know what I mean? And so in my mind, when Weidman came in, I thought Weidman was a terrible matchup, but I also, you know, now you see that father time has kicked in, you know, and also USADA came in. So I'm thinking that that played a factor as well. So I don't think, I don't agree. But I do think that Stipe could run into that trouble. I do think that Stipe's that guy for some reason. I think if he lost like 3 in a row, that it's going to like really diminish his greatest of all time.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting discussion, and you know, I think we can agree both sides. There's an argument to be made. There is some truth on both sides. It just depends where you lie, and it's going to depend fighter to fighter. So it's a really interesting discussion to have. If you see JDS anytime down at ATT, tell him to keep going, right? Because at the end of the day, seeing him go in there and win is awesome. As long as he has his health, that's what I care about the most. So it's good just to see legends like that still fight. So I will defer to you as far as that goes. Now, rounding out this main card here, you got Daniel Pineda.
Hey, I gotta ask a question. You know what I mean? I'm trying to figure out what we're looking like on our picks right now. You know, how many am I ahead? I don't want to hear the totals. I just want to know how many I'm ahead. So I think I'm up 3.
You
got 2 last week.
You got 2 right this last card, right?
Oh, no, I think I went up 2 on you this last week.
Yeah, right.
Stipe, and I went with
Dvashvili.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you got 2 right. Yeah. I wasn't gonna mention it. I'm actually upset that you did, because I didn't want to remind myself that I went 0 for 5. Do you know this is the second time this year I have went 0 for in a main event prediction? I have never done that before ever in my life. And I've actually, historically speaking, I've done very well with my picks. And DraftKings, I finished second out of 20,000 people on 2 different occasions. Like, I'm usually pretty good. And I have been sucking this year. It's 2020. That's what it is. It's 2020. It
really is, because you got a lot of short notice fights, right? So you have a lot of short notice fights, and you just have a lot of like these weird matchups, and things are playing out weird, even in these fights where, you know, you're having these injuries, you're having, you know, just like these big upsets, and then you have just, I don't know. It's been a tough year to pick for sure.
For sure. Yeah. Well, you're up 3 now, Rocco. Thanks for reminding me. I'll round out this main card. You got Daniel Pineda round 2 finish over Herbert Burns. Big upset there. A lot of people are really excited about Herbert Burns, so you got to tip your cap to the veteran Pineda. He's closing in on 40, and that was a huge win for him. And then you have, obviously, we mentioned before, John Dodson losing to Merab Dashvili there in the first fight on the main card. But all in all, it was a fun card to watch. I was a little underwhelmed with it, just with the O'Malley injury, the eye pokes, and the main event. I do feel like the card wasn't as good as it could have been, but it is what it is. It was still fun to watch, and now we have another card to look forward to this weekend, UFC Vegas 7, headlined by the former champion Frankie Edgar and Pedro Munoz, which is a really interesting matchup. But to start it off on the main card, it's a welterweight bout, and I think you have to have your eyes on this one, Rocco, because I think either one of these guys, I could see you fighting in 2021. I really could. So Daniel Rodriguez, Takashi Sato, Sato 16-3. Rodriguez is 12-1. Break it down for me, man. What do you think in this one?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't even know them too well. You know, I was they were never really on my radar. You know what I mean? Obviously, until I just saw them on the main card here, is then I was starting to like research into them. But I think it's going to be a pretty good fight. You know, exciting fight. Evenly matched. You know, I think that it's going to be just a fight that comes down to who wants it more. And like you said, I mean, it's just tough to pick right now. It's tough. These fights are tough to pick with, not sure how the training sessions are going. Mostly, where's I don't know exactly where Sato's training out of right now. If he's coming out of the country or exactly where he's coming out of. So that's the big question for me. So for that, I'm going to go with Rodriguez.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with Rodriguez as well. Sato is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. He got beat by Bilal Muhammad. Rodriguez beat the Dirty Bird, Tim Means, and Gabe Green. So I think I'm leaning with Rodriguez there on this one. The second fight on the main card, you got a 125-pound bout, Maria Agapova and Shanna Dobson. I mean, what can you say? I mean, Dobson, I think she's a good fighter and everything, but she's 3-4.
Talk about that elephant in the room, or should we? Is that discussion worthy, or is that like a no to talk about how the hell you're in the UFC at 3-4?
Yeah, let's talk about it. Like I don't understand it. She's lost 3 in a row, and she's 3-4. I'm surprised she even got a fight, to be honest with you. I mean, I think this is a clear mismatch. They're putting her up against Agapova, who's 9-1, a very well-rounded fighter. She's a heavy favorite. I don't see any way she loses this fight. And this is clear. Okay, you're getting cut from the UFC, and you're going to be 3-5 after this fight. Like, you're going to have to go out, fight in a regional promotion, string together a bunch of wins, a bunch of impressive wins at that, to even be considered back in the big show.
I mean, I just like, geez, man. You look at the record alone, you're just like, come on, man. This is supposed to be the best fighters in the world, like without a question. Like it's not even up for debate that the best fighters, in the world. And then you're running in there. I don't know what's going on, if they're that hard up at 125 right now, or what's going on for that women's division. But like you said, it's a huge mismatch. I think the Vegas odds are like minus 1,500 or something like that. That's 15-1. You got to bet $1,500 to win $1.
Wow.
Yeah.
If you had some money to put down, I mean, if Dobson lands, some overhand right and puts her up, I mean, you can win some big bucks.
No, I think that, obviously, it might be worth a $5 bet or something like that. What would you make? 1,000? I mean, you make 10-1, like $500 or $50 or something like that.
Let me ask, what do you do when you go out in Vegas after you're done fighting? If you go out in the town, like what is a night like for Rocco Martin out in Vegas?
You don't want to hear this.
Yes, I do. That's what I asked.
No, so the last time I just stayed in the hotel room because I was kind of tickled, and but the time before I went, I had a lot of people there. When I fought Ryan LaFleur. And we had like 50 or 60 people there. So we met up at a bar, went out there for a little bit. And then I was literally running all the way around. I was running around Vegas by myself for a while. I don't even know what happened. I was just all of a sudden by myself. I know that my coaches were all looking for me. And I was really just ended up in random places. And I just like, all of a sudden I'm just like, it's like 4 a.m., 5 a.m. I'm like, I should probably go back to my place, and go to sleep. And my girlfriend at the time was not very pleased with my disappearing act.
Man, I miss Vegas. What's your favorite place to stay at? I've stayed at the Mirage. I've stayed at MGM. I've stayed at Caesars. I've stayed at a few different places. Where do you like the most?
I mean, I like the Airbnb, man.
Yeah.
I stay at Airbnbs there at a house. I like to have a little privacy, and I don't like to I feel like those casinos, you feel so congested, So I like to stay off the strip a little bit. But I mean, obviously, I've stayed at the Wynn before. I've stayed at the MGM and Tropicana, and stayed at the Hard Rock actually. Hard Rock had like Pink Taco in there. That place was really good, man. I'm not a huge taco person, but Pink Taco was money.
Yeah, okay. I've stayed at the Hard Rock before too. Yeah, when I lived in LA, I mean, that's like a 4-hour drive. I was down there way more than I should have been. I spent loads of money, but I'll digress. Let's move on to the next fight. Your boy, well, he's my boy too. I've interviewed him a bunch. Mike Rodriguez taking on Marcin Prachnio. This is a really interesting fight. I talked to Mike fairly recently. I interviewed him before this fight. This is a big one for him, man. He's coming off a very disappointing performance against Da-Un Jung. And he said he just wasn't himself. He wasn't in the right headspace. He feels reinvigorated. He feels more like himself now. And I think we're going to see a more motivated, hungry, dialed-in Mike Slow Rodriguez here for this fight. And Prachnio's lost 2 in a row. Both guys that he lost to are southpaws. And Rodriguez was telling me, like, he feels like he's way better than both of those guys, and he just feels like his style is going to be a nightmare for Prachnio. I'm going to tend to agree with him, and I think he needs this fight, so I'm going New England Cartel to get this dub.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I have inside info, with Tyson, and Tyson says that Rodriguez is looking phenomenal right now. He's looking mind right, mental right, physically right, and like you said, he's a southpaw, so it's going to be, I think it's a tailor-made fight for him. It's really setting him up to have a big win and, get back on the right path after that disappointing fight. When did they fight, like Singapore or something like that? So he's definitely seems motivated and hungry, and I think it's going to be an exciting night for him. And obviously, I'll go with him as well. Yeah.
So we're all on the same page right now. I mean, interested to see where you go here in this co-main and main event. Co-main event, OSP of St. Preux against Alonzo Menifield. OSP is 24-14. Menifield is 9-1. As I was saying earlier, talking about gatekeepers and whatnot, I feel like that's what St. Preux is at this point. Super athletic. He's got a lot of power. I mean, he gets some very unique finishes, submission wins. But Menifield is a beast, man. Like, he's so powerful and strong. It's going to be an interesting matchup. How do you see this one shaking out?
Yeah, obviously St. Preux coming back down after having that one fight at heavyweight, right? And, Menifield's taking out short notice, So again, my red flags are going up right away, like thinking that he might not be fully prepared. But I think everyone in the UFC now has realized, like, you don't call the UFC saying, like, hey, I'm ready to fight unless you're in shape. You know what I mean? So it's like, because that they need fights. So they're turning around guys like nothing, So I think I'm going to go with the experience and the gatekeeper in this one, and I'm leaning towards OSP.
Okay. Well, I'm not mad at that. I'm going to go the other direction, though. I think Menifield is not just a prospect. I think he's the real deal, and I think he's going to continue to get better. He's got a ton of power, and I think he's pretty well-rounded too. And I'm picking him. Look, he beat Paul Craig. I really like Paul Craig. Paul Craig is legit, and Menifield knocked him out. He also knocked out Vinicius Moreira in the first round as well. So this guy's got a ton of power. OSP, it's going to be a good fight, but I'm going Menifield. Now, main event, Frankie Edgar, I mean, legend, one of the greatest pound-for-pound fighters ever. He is a little bit long in the tooth. He's been around for a while now. He's 23-8-1. He's lost 3 of his last 4 fights, but again, to the best in the division, title fights and whatnot. Pedro Munoz is no joke, man. He's 18-4. He did lose to Aljamain. He's beat guys like Cody Garbrandt, Rob Font, Ray Johns, Brian Caraway. This is a legit fighter, but that's all Frankie Edgar fights. All he fights is legit fighters, and he really only loses to the top of the division. I think Munoz is like not quite at the top. He's like on that next tier. And I think Frankie's still got enough juice left in the tank to be a little bit better than him. I'm going with the veteran to get the win.
Really, it's going to be such an interesting fight, man. Because I do think that this is Frankie's natural weight class. I do think size-wise, he's always given up a little bit of size, even at 45, and it'll be interesting to see how he does with the cut. I know he's talking about how easy it's going to be, and he's just so well-rounded, you know what I mean? And only thing I always get a little bit worried with is Munoz is straightforward throwing heat, and he's just very straightforward, and Edgar moves very well with very crisp boxing, with great head movement and angles. But I do think Munoz is a dark horse in this division, man. I think he's truly a guy that people are starting to realize, like, this guy's legit. Like, he's a legitimate fighter. Like this, like you said, he's knocked out Garbrandt. He submitted Rob Font. He came out. He did hurt what's his name a couple times, Funky, geez, I can't think of his name right now.
Aljamain?
Yeah, so Aljo, he hurt him with those just little teeps to the body, and he fell in love with those and didn't go after him a little bit. But Aljo just moves so good. I'm leaning towards Munoz. I really am. I think it's going to be a phenomenal fight, and but I think he's also another great guy. Don from ATT, great human that's willing to help you any way he can, and give you his time. And for that, I'm going to lean towards him, and I think this could be one of the best fights of the year.
Really? Yeah, you know what? Because Frankie Edgar is very difficult to finish. I mean, he's so durable. He's so well-rounded. That's an interesting point. It very well could be. Let me ask you this. If Edgar loses, where does he go from here?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how he loses. But if he loses, I think it's time. If he's got enough money saved up and he's healthy, and maybe it's time for him to. I don't know. Obviously, he just maybe takes a step back in competition if he doesn't just get, not clean. Maybe take a step back and just enjoy fighting. Maybe he goes back and just, maybe him and Faber go at it again. To rematch at 35 this time. I don't know exactly if that's the route that they should go, but I would imagine that your hopes of ever winning a title again would be over, and that he's I don't know if I think that's his goal. That's why he's dropping down to 35, is that he wants a title run again. So I would imagine that he'd be thinking about wrapping it up.
Yeah, no, I agree. But very interesting main event fight. Can't wait for it this Saturday, obviously, on ESPN Plus. Rocco, what a fun show this was, huh? Episode 12, a lot of good back and forth, some really great dialogue, and dissecting some interesting fights, and talking about a lot of legacies, a lot of legends in the sport. Yeah, a really, really fun show. So again, for Rocco Martin, I am Ryan Jarrell. We will see you guys next week.